All right, here we have a demonstration of questions 2, 3, and 4 from the problem set at the end of chapter 4 in the Krugman text. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to demonstrate the creation of production functions, a PPF, the wage rate, and then we're going to apply it to home and foreign and get an interpretation. All right, so to start with problem 2, the book just asks us to produce production functions for good 1 and good 2. So that is up here. I've done like the four part process. So this is good 2 up here. This is good 1 down here. This is labor over here. And then here is the PPF that we produce. Okay, so to do the production functions, we just take the information and have the book, and we lay it out. So labor for good 2 increases to the left, and the output increases moving up. So we go from 0 to 10, there's our change. From 10 to 20, here's our change, etc. Right? So that is how we produce this curve, and then we do the same thing down here for good 1, except for now labor is increasing as we move down the y-axis, and output is increasing as we move to the right on the x-axis. Okay, and then that produces this curve A. Curve B we'll get to in question 4. Okay, so here is good A. That's our production function for good 1. All right, then we are going to produce the PPF simply by lining up what happens when we start with, say, 0 of labor for good 2 and all 100 people are in good 1. Well, then we produce 100. Okay, we move to 90 and 10, and we get this point here, right? So we've got 10, gets you to there, 90, and so on and so forth. It's going to create this line right here. So there's your PPF. So the reason why it's curved is because the marginal product of labor is diminishing. So as we add more people, our first group that gets added to good 2 has a large return, right? But then the next group has a slightly smaller return, and smaller and smaller and smaller as we go. It's hard to see in the drawing just because I wasn't super accurate with my points from the text, but you can see that it does the return that you get as you add more and more labor gets smaller and smaller as you go. Okay, so next we have so problem 3. So problem 3 is going to ask about the marginal product of labor, and it starts by letting us know that the price of good 2 relative to that of good 1 is 2. So if we were to take the relative price of good 2, it'd be the price of P2 over P1. So then we can say that the price of good 2 is 2 and the price of good 1 is 1. And that will just help us to draw this, because if you recall, to figure out the wage, we have to multiply the price of the good times the marginal product of labor for the good. Okay, so to determine graphically the wage, we're going to have to draw these two lines. So for good 1, we take the price of good 1 times the marginal product of labor. So that's just 1 times the marginal product of labor, which the book gives. And we are going to start here with 0. So if 0 people are making good 1, then clearly there's nothing there. So we're going to start with when we add 10 people. Right, that's the first point the book gives us. The marginal product of labor is 1.5. So we plot our point there. Okay. At 20, the marginal product of labor is 1.14. So then we plot the point there. And so on until you get the whole curve. You draw it out like that. Right, we just connect the points and get the line. Remember, we're just multiplying by 1, so we just take it straight out of the book. Now for good 2, you're going to start at this side is 0 and then increasing this way to get to 100. So for good 2, when you add that first 10, the marginal product of labor is really high. And why is it so much higher here is because we remember we have to multiply by the price, and the price is 2 for good 2. So that's going to be quite a bit bigger. So we do the same thing. We just plot the points, but this time multiplying by 2 till we get them all, connect them with a line. We see the two graphs intersect here at 30 for labor 1, which coming from this way means 70 for good 2 with labor, and the wage is 1. So the labor on good 1 is going to be 30 people, labor on good 2 is going to be 70, and the wage is going to equilibrate at 1. And it makes sense that you're going to be having more people producing good 2, right? Because the wage is twice as expensive. Okay. So now that we've drawn this graph up here, it says, so using the graph drawn for problem 2 to determine the output of each sector. So that's this box that I've drawn, right? So this box is drawn in at 30 people for good 1 and at 70 people for good 2. So then we come up to the point there. So this is the output for good 2. And then at 30, this is the output for good 1, which is 48.6 for good 1 and 87.6 for good 2. Okay, then we want to determine that the slope of the production possibility frontier at that point equals the relative price. Okay, so the slope of this curve with good 2 on the y-axis and good 1 on the x-axis, okay, when we have that set up in that way, the slope is the negative marginal product of labor for good 2 divided by the marginal product of labor for good 1. Okay, so when we see that, we go, okay, at this point, what is it? Well, the marginal product of labor for good 2 is negative 0.5. The marginal product of labor for good 1 is 1. So negative 0.5 over 1 is negative 1/2. Okay, and then that needs to be equal to the relative price. When you do the relative price, it's the reciprocal of the marginal products in terms of, so you put the negative price for good 1 over the price of good 2. The price of good 1 is 1, good 2 is 2, that's negative 1/2. So indeed, these are equal, and we've confirmed what he wants us to confirm. All right, so question 4 is then going to introduce home and foreign. They both produce goods 1 and 2 at first. Same kind of situation. They're basically identical countries initially. But then what happens is the capital stock in home grows. Okay, so this growth in the capital stock is going to influence good 1 because capital is used to produce good 1, not good 2. So that's going to push the PPF out, right, to this line B here. The reason why that is because here's your production function for good 1. It's going to shift up because now for every given input of labor at 10, instead of producing here, now we're going to produce more. So we're going to produce here. At 20, we don't produce this amount, we're going to produce more at 20. So at any given amount of labor, we're now going to produce more. So that shifts it out here, which will in turn impact the PPF. Now, it doesn't change the production function for good 2 though. Good 2's production function has stayed the same. So that's why our point still starts here. It just then bows out further, okay? And then when we come down here to figure our new wage rate out, okay, now he doesn't give us some specific numbers, so we can't do this specifically, but we can just estimate. So then we would come down here and the marginal product of labor for good 1 has now increased. Okay, so it's not a price change, it's just the marginal product of labor is better now because we have more capital stock. So that's going to shift that marginal product curve in like this, which is going to raise the wages of the people, and it's going to shift workers too. So we see we get an increase in wage, and we get an increase in laborers in good 1 and a decrease of laborers in good 2. All right, sorry about that malfunction. And so we're just going to have an answer for the questions now. Okay, so we see the increase in the supply of capital for home and its effects on production. We see on the same graph, next we're going to do, so B, next we have to draw the supply curves. So over here on this page, we have the relative demand for the world. It's the same in the two countries. And then we have the two supplies. Here's the supply for home. Here's the supply for foreign. On our y-axis, we have the relative price of good 1, P1 over P2. And on the x-axis, we have the relative quantity of good 1, Q1 over Q2. So at any given price, home is going to be able to produce more because of their increase in capital. So once we open up to trade, home will export good 1, foreign will export good 2. How will that impact the various factors? In home, labor will be ambiguous, remember, because labor can go back and forth. Capital will benefit because we're exporting the good that's capital specific. And land, T for terra, land will be hurt because land is specific to the good that is being imported. Okay, and then at foreign, again, labor is ambiguous, but now capital and land is flipped because foreign is going to export, right? Foreign is going to export the good that is land sensitive, and it's going to import the capital sensitive. So the imports are hurt and the exports benefit. All right, that pretty much covers the mathematical example. I hope that helped out.